Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's demo on streamlining food safety and quality with Icicle ERP. My name is Romina. I'm sales and marketing here at Icicle, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. A few housekeeping notes. We are recording today's session, so you can refer to it in the future or share it with those who couldn't join us today. Also, we will be doing question and answers at the end of the session. So until then, use the Zoom chat feature to enter your questions throughout the session or raise your hand during the Q&A session so we can go through things one by one. It is my pleasure to introduce Stephen Burton, founder and CEO of Icicle, to share his demonstration of our software with you today. Over to you, Steve.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. I'll let you see me in a minute here, but to start with, I've got a bit of a slideshow, just a few slides to go through, and then we'll jump right into the demo. The functionality related to food safety and quality management is quite extensive at Icicle, so we have a lot to push through. So let's get into it. So essentially, Icicle started out life as a pure food safety application, and then all the ERP features were built sort of after that. So the core part of Icicle is really quite comprehensive. So we're the developers of the actual software itself. We built it from the ground up, from scratch. And more recently, we've enabled a whole bunch of AI features in Icicle to really enhance it quite a bit. Our vision really is to be the global leader in food manufacturing software generally. And I think we're probably the most advanced in terms of food safety and quality control, definitely. And our objective really is to provide as intelligent system as possible and also cloud-based. So we manage the system completely. We do food safety, traceability, quality assurance, really everything that you need to manage your food safety program. And we have all of these modules available in Icicle. And what we're going to focus on right now is going to be the food safety and quality management piece, as opposed to all the rest of it. Excellent return on investment with Icicle. Your ROI comes back generally in the first year. And always happy to answer questions or follow up after the demo. But let's get into the interesting part here. So what I've done here is I've set up a demo for the Icicle system itself. So this is the home page of Icicle. And we have all of these functions and features under the food safety tab that we're going to focus on today. So what I've done is I've set up a demo across the top of the screen. It's a cloud-based app, so it's running in a browser. And I've set up all the relevant screens just to facilitate the flow and push through this all in half an hour. But the general highlights that you can do in Icicle is you can start out with your compliance program. So this could be your SQF or your BRC. You have all your SOPs and other procedure policy documents in this section over here. You can do electronic inspections. You can do lab tests. You can do vendor management, vendor assessments, keep track of your training records, like literally everything that you need to do. So let's start with the first slide here. So in this case, your SQF program or BRC or FSSC 22000, whichever one you're using, can be preloaded into your account so that the scheme documentation lives right in the Icicle system. We set all this up for you in advance. This particular one is SQF edition 9. We're going to deploy version 10 soon because it's coming out in July. But all the relevant kind of bullet points within the program live directly in Icicle. And you can drill down to the various element details. And this is straight out of the manual, right? So you're going to see just the exact text that SQF or whichever scheme you're using or putting out here. And one of the kind of interesting things about that, as opposed to just using the paper manual, is that you can associate your procedure documents, your SOPs, your policy documents directly into the program. So when you're in an audit, you can show the auditor, here's your program requirement, and here's our SOPs that satisfy that requirement. So this particular one is the supplier program, and there's a policy document attached to it for the supplier approval and compliance policy. And everything is hyperlinked in Icicle, so you can click on the actual link and you can bring up the details of this particular procedure, right? So here we have an SOP. So this is going to look, very much like your kind of Word or PDF SOPs. We have all of the structure for all the various schemes baked kind of into Icicle. So you just fill out whichever ones are relevant for you, and those ones will appear on your SOP, the rendered SOP like this one. Where this differs from sort of a Word or PDF SOP is that down at the bottom, though, after you go through all the regular text, and of course you can export this to PDF if you want to disseminate it by email or something, but you can also see the reverse link back to the prerequisite program. So this is the supplier approval program, and this is hyperlinked. So I could click there and I could go back. And then there's lots of other stuff that you can do as well. And one of the things that you might have to do for your SOPs is that you need to do an annual review. Right. So you can schedule the task, you can assign it to a person or to a team. And then after you do that, that task is going to automatically appear in the user's task list. You get email notifications of the tasks that have been assigned to you or people that you need to verify. We have a whole notification infrastructure where you can opt in to get notifications when various things happen, like when a task is complete. And I've opened up a different one here as well. This one is a premises SOP. So this is around inspecting the premises, making sure that your premises is free from contaminants and all of that kind of thing. And what you can do for this is you can when you go down, you see not only the program requirements that it's linked to, and the tasks that have been assigned, but also you can link these SOPs directly to inspection templates, like in this case, a premises inspection. And then after you've done that, you can see the history of the inspections that you've done. And the same is true here at the next part with lab tests. So we have lab test templates. And once you've assigned this, you've related this to the actual SOP, then the history of all the lab tests that you've done are displayed on the side. And of course, it's all hyperlinked, so I can go in and look at any of these. And this gives you kind of a tripod of information that helps you during audits. So you can tell the auditor, here's my SOP, here's all of the evidence that I'm actually following it. And that SOP in turn is related to the prerequisite program. So it makes your audits go much faster and sort of much easier. You can also keep track of all the training records for all the users that have been trained. You can see what the approval date is. Everything's linked and color coded. If it needs attention, it turns red. And we have version history as well. So every time you make a change to the SOP, the previous version is saved and then the new version is promoted to the primary. Here's an example of the premises inspection itself. So you might walk around with a tablet or mobile computer, or even your phone, and you can do electronic inspections. These interfaces are optimized for mobile devices. And for each one, you can go here, for example, to the building design and maintenance. You can check, does it meet the regulatory requirements? Yes. Is access secure? Perhaps you found a door that was open. So if that's the case, you could say no, and you could say, door open, or you could, if it's something more serious, like it represents a deviation or a nonconformity of some type, you can actually launch a corrective action directly from here. So this is a feature that the auditors absolutely love. And when you do create a corrective action, which you can assign to a particular user, this user is going to get notified that a corrective action has been created that they're responsible for. And we have various dashboards and reports, of course, that you can look at to see what your corrective actions are, who's most on top of their tasks, who's most behind, and you can make sure that those are properly managed. Okay. This is an example of one of these reports. So this one here, very common Icicle interface. By the way, we do have a major UI redesign happening at the moment. ETA is about 2 months before it's released. So we're just making everything kind of look nicer, although the core functionality is going to remain the same. So if you're currently an Icicle user, I know many people on the call are, don't worry, and we're not changing your workflows around, but it's just the aesthetics are going to look better. So here's the corrective action report. You can search by facility. Icicle supports multiple facilities, so you can look at one, search for that, and then it'll filter it, so you see only the ones that are related to that facility. And of course, you can go in and look at the details of any of these or change the status. And if you were responsible for this corrective action, there would be a check mark there where you can click it to indicate that you've completed it if you're the person it's been assigned to. Another thing you can do with Icicle is internal audits. So there's a weighted kind of system here, and it comes out of the box with existing sort of template we consider to be the best practice. But if you want to create your own for your own inspection, your own lab test, your own internal audit, whatever, you can create your own with your own weighting systems and your own questions. In this particular one, what you do is you answer the question in a scale of 1 to 5. And based on the weight at the end of the day, Icicle will create a score for you. So your document control procedure, for example, is in good shape. That would be a 1. If your record control, you could use a little bit of improvement, you might rate that one step down. And of course, the red version at the end here is seriously bad. Maybe I don't have a legal policy, so I'm marking the score for that as a negative amount. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so now we look a little bit at the product and the quality control check side of the world. So Icicle has a whole raft of features and functionalities in terms of your ability to create products and define your formulas and unit conversion and all your GS1 information to generate barcodes and all of that. But I'm not going to really cover that at the moment. Just point out here that we have a product. Okay, so from the food safety and quality assurance side of the world, the important bits really are the food safety specific attributes that you wouldn't find in other systems. So important product characteristics, how the product's used, for example, where the product's sold. You're going to recognize all these things from your HACCP program. And this is where Icicle gets the information from to generate HACCP plans. So Icicle can actually generate complete HACCP plans for you, as soon as the information's in there. And part of our onboarding processes will take your existing HACCP plan and we'll teach you, or sort of set it all up for you in the system. So we'll take your existing documentation and we'll convert it into Icicle so you don't have to worry about that. When you start using Icicle, you'll start essentially from the position that you were at when you signed with us. So no additional work there. But the big advantage to doing it in a database-driven system like Icicle is that if you make a change to something in your HACCP program, you just have to regenerate your HACCP plan and everything will be updated. So you don't have to worry about pulling papers out of binders and things like that. Beyond that, there's allergen management in Icicle. So everything is flagged with an allergen, which feeds through to the logistics piece. So you can make sure you segregate products. We won't go too much into that stuff. You also have may contain allergens. And you can make the sort of marketing product claims. You can see a history of the purchase orders. You can see your inventory amounts. But here, what we're going to look at now is 2 things. We're going to look at the formulas and we're going to look at the product specifications. So we'll go in detail. You can see I have 2 formulas here. One's been terminated, retired. And another one is the current one that we're using. So we're going to go look at that in a second. But just before I go there, point out that we can define all sorts of specifications related to this product. So these are going to be things that you want to measure, you want to check, the basis of your QA and QC checks. So, here, for example, we have at the bottom, and the pH, it needs to be below 5.3. If it goes above that, you're going to get an alert, and it's going to potentially appear in your COA if you want to as well. So one of the things Icicle can do is generate COAs based on your quality control checks. So there's 2 types of product specs that come out of the box with Icicle: quality and process specs. And then you can also have either range values, so something, it's a number that you're going to measure, or it could be pass fail, like a metal detector check, for example. So if we go look at the formula, like I promised you we would do, here we're looking at the formula. So what we're doing is we're making Willy Wonka's golden ticket bars, and it's going to be based on a formula, like I just showed you a second ago. And what we have in the formula is we have ingredients, we have materials, we have packaging, and we have labor. Those are the main things that you need to worry about for that. So each formula you would set up, you can search for existing ingredients that you've already approved and defined. You can also search for available ingredients from the Icicle community where they've chosen to make their products public. So everything is private by default, but a lot of our clients are ingredient manufacturers, for example. So they they want people to know about their products and buy them, so they can make them public, and you can search for those products. With the recent challenges that we've had with respect to tariffs and the relationship between Canada and the US, we're based in Canada. I did a check recently of our database, and we found that we have about 80,000 products available that are of non-US origin. So, if you decided to go down that route, it's an excellent place to find them. So for each ingredient, I'm going to define the actual ingredient, and then I'm also going to put in some sort of a quantity that I need for each unit. So in this case, the soy lecithin amount here was 0.4 kilograms is required to make some sort of yield of the product. In this case, it's 200 cases, right? And in addition to the ingredients, we're also going to have materials. These are going to be things that are consumed during the manufacturing process, but don't end up on the label. So lubricants and sanitizers are great examples. You can also have packaging defined. So this is going to be, there's going to be food contact and non-food contact. And there's a lot of sophistication in the formula that I won't go into right now, but doing things like, WIPs or work in progress. You can decompose products into byproducts. You can have rework. There's all kinds of things like that. But we'll just leave those for now. So the next thing I'll do here is I'll show you the other part of the formula. So this part is sort of infrequently used, but it's what it is a quick and easy kind of way to create a flowchart. And you don't have to worry about the data annotations or CCP annotations or PC annotations or any of that, because Icicle will add those automatically. But we do need to know kind of what the process steps are and what the relationship is between them. So you can simply, drag and drop items here. I can add a spacer, to this, and we want to create some sort of a flow chart. And then Icicle will render a much sort of nicer, cleaner one when it comes time to actually generate your HACCP or HARPC plan. Okay. Next, I want to drill in a little bit and look at an ingredient. So this one is, I wanted to pick an ingredient that I know nothing about. So I found this dried goji berries. I have absolutely no idea what those are, but what we're going to do is some sort of hazard analysis and control on this particular ingredient. So we've defined the name here. We can define all the other basic information, the units. We have unit conversion built into Icicle. Storage temperatures you can define. You can flag it as having allergens. You can set multiple suppliers to supply you with a particular ingredient, but you can define what the allergens are, if any, occur here. But the part I really want to focus on now is the hazard analysis. So we have two parts to that. The first one is an AI assisted hazard analysis piece. It really is a hazard identification piece, probably a better way to describe it. And what I can do is simply click on this and it'll allow me to search for the ingredient. Now, you want to keep the ingredient search as sort of generic as possible. So, probably dried or not dried, doesn't really matter. The hazards are going to be similar. So I might remove the word dried just to have a more kind of broader search. And then I'm going to click the Analyze button, and Icicle is going to use a large language model to determine what the hazards might be related to these goji berries. So we'll just wait a second for that to finish. The analysis takes, 30 seconds or something like that generally. So there you go. So a popular superfood, it may have various sorts of hazards, biological hazards such as bacteria or fungi. So that's a great example. And you can read through the rest as well, and you can see the physical hazards, the chemical hazards, and radiological hazards as well, even. So based on those, now, as you may know, AI is not 100% reliable. They can hallucinate sometimes. So that's why we don't automatically assign whatever the AI says. We give you an opportunity to kind of look at it and then make your own assignment in a separate step. And that step is done here in the hazard section. So when I click edit here, can see the smart suggestions. So I can use kind of what the Icicle system would think might be the best hazards. I can also add any existing hazard from the allergen database. Icicle has an enormous allergen database built into it. And I can create a new hazard if I don't see what I'm looking for. So let's start with the smart suggestions. Same idea here. I can remove the word dried to make it more generic. I can search for that. And now it comes up with these hazards. So the two that I identified over here before were fungi and bacteria. And if I look at the actual ones that Icicle suggested, it's giving me some chemical ones and some physical hazards as well. Like the presence of hazardous extraneous material makes a lot of sense because it's a field crop. Could have sticks and stones coming in with it, so I might choose that one. Mold was one that the AI identified as well, and then it's got a bacterial hazard as well. This one's a bit generic for me. I might go to my existing ones and I might search for something that was more specific, like E. coli or salmonella that may come from, because it's a field crop, presumably. So I might choose that as opposed to such a general description. But, for the sake of the example, I'll just select this one for now. And the last one here is a presence of toxic herbs. Seems possible. I don't know if you would include that or not. I'm a software guy, not really a food safety guy, but there you go. So I'll click add, and now all of these hazards have been associated with this particular ingredient. And we have this hazard identification tool here that allows you to analyze and control the hazard. So here I've got, in this case, this one is toxic herbs that may contaminate honey. And there's a decision tree, which is really based on the CFIA's Form 8 decision tree. So it has sort of questions that it asks, and then it prompts you for information until it arrives at some kind of conclusion. So the default for this type of hazard, most ingredient hazards are controlled by a program, and you might pick, whichever program it is, or you could enter in the actual hazard directly. So I'm going to submit my supplier program, and you could give it whatever that number happens to be for your program. And, I can click save, and then that would just be, that would be controlled. Or if it isn't controlled by prerequisite program, like it's not the supplier program, or it's not also with a letter of guarantee, you may say no. And then it's going to ask you, well, is there some other way to control it? You'd say yes. In this case, I've said testing, and then you could continue to answer the questions until you come up to some sort of conclusion, right? And once you press save, then that hazard would be controlled. The other part of it is the risk analysis piece. So here what you would do is you would identify what is the severity and likelihood of harm being caused to humans should this hazard get away from you and actually occur. So, is it going to kill everybody in the planet for sure? Is nobody even going to notice, right? Or anything in between. And once you've answered these questions to your satisfaction, you can click save, and then that hazard now is going to be saved. Okay. And then at that point, you can generate a HACCP plan. You can mix and match products on different HACCP plans. So in this case, I'm going to grab all my bonbons, and I could grab those. Or I could say, okay, I only want to do one with my golden ticket bar. I could save that, and now I'm ready. I'm going to be ready to generate a HACCP plan for just the golden ticket bar. So this departs a little bit from the way that you may have looked at your HACCP plans before, because you're not fixed to only one HACCP plan or 3 HACCP plans or whatever. You can mix and match products anytime you want. And the reason why you might want to do that is if you're selling just 3 products to Costco, maybe you're going to want to have just the Costco. And here's what the plan looks like when it's generated. So it could be easily demonstrated, but just in the interest of time, I've generated one ahead of time. So it has all the basic forms that are required. Here's the flow diagram that I showed you before, but with the CCP and PC annotations and process step annotations added for you. Okay. The whole rest of the plan is here as well. So once you've kind of created your plan and you start production, one of the things that you may wish to do is quality control checks. So here's an example of the quality control check interface. You can either activate the scanner. You can use Icicle with scanners for all kinds of things. In this case, I might just search for something. So I'm going to search for my golden ticket bars, and I'm going to see all the lot codes that I've produced of the golden ticket bars. I can pick one of those, and all of the QC checks are going to appear here. So this is optimized also for a mobile device. You can see the things that need to be checked, like the pH here, for example. You have information to provide to users if you want to get more details, and you can see what the acceptable reference ranges are, and then you can record the actual result. If it's outside of the range, you're going to get a visual warning that there's a problem, but you can still save it because it may be the actual measurement. Ideally, of course, you're going to want them to be within the acceptable reference range. So when I create this now I've got a quality control check that's available to me. We have a different interface for this. If you prefer this one, I just wanted to show that there's another option. So essentially the same thing. This particular one would be launched directly from the production run as opposed to a standalone QC check, but you have 2 options on it. Another thing I just wanted to show you was customer complaints. So we have a whole incident management infrastructure built into Icicle, which has lots of different functionality available for you, for customer complaints, for recalls, for any kind of incident that occurs. Here's an example of a customer complaint. So, it's related to the product that was produced at a particular facility. Here's the product, it's chocolate truffles. You can see what the description of the problem was. The product has a frosty appearance, and you can see the corrective actions that have been set. So just like with lab tests or with inspections, we have predefined corrective actions that we consider best in class, but you can also create your own templates with your own corrective actions, or you can just create one on the fly. After you've kind of dealt with the complaint, you can record the results of your root cause analysis. You can identify preventative measures that you put in place to make sure this never happens again. You can flag users for retraining. You can see which production runs were affected, and they're all hyperlinked, so you can go look at the production run, and you can upload images and documents throughout Icicle and make comments. At the end of the kind of rainbow, once you start using the system, you can see these types of dashboards in Icicle. So we have all kinds of different dashboards. This one here is related to quality assurance and it's showing customer complaints at the moment. So you can see what the top 5 corrective actions are, the root cause analysis, preventative measures, and you've got this trending down here at the bottom as well. So this trending interface, actually, the blue line is the historical and the yellow line is the projected future. So the AI will look at your historical data and it'll trend going forward on that. And we're always working to improve those forecasts. In fact, we have a project right now with AWS to improve the AI forecasting based on other things like weather, for example. So that's coming out shortly. We have more traditional trending interfaces as well. This one is trending incidents by type. And you can see kind of the history over time. You can see, kind of a tabular format. You can export to PDF or to Excel, and you can do your out-of-bound analysis if you want to do something that you don't see there. How are we doing for time? Just about out of time. So I'll show you this particular part. Actually, yeah, let's go to, I'll just pick an existing one that's already been created. It'll be a little bit faster. So you can do a recall, a mock recall. Hopefully you'll never have to do a real recall. You can pick a particular product. Oh, that's the customer complaints. Oh, sorry, I want to do recalls here. Go to my recalls. So these are ones that I've done in the past. So I'll just bring one of these up. And if I look at the view, the Icicle right now is going in and it's looking at all of the various inventory transactions, the shipping records, and it pulls together a complete recall report for you. So it did that actually in real time, just after I clicked the button. So in this case, it was a chocolate liquor, which was used as rework in other batches of the chocolate liquor. And then that chocolate liquor in turn was used in all these various batches of golden ticket bar. Actually, I apologize. The basis for this one was organic coconut oil that was used in the chocolate liquor, which in turn was used in the coconut bar. So you can see exactly where everything is. You can see the quantity that's outstanding, color-coded to indicate whether or not you need to take action or not. And then you've got a detailed mass balance as well. So you can see where exactly everything is. And a notification history or report that'll show you all of the customers that need to be notified as a result, in addition to any corrective actions that are related to the recall, incident causes, preventative measures, and you can even flag users for retraining here. Okay, I'll just briefly show you really maybe just 2 more screens, and then I'll open it up for questions. So this one is a training matrix. So you can keep your training records in Icicle. So all your users can be trained, and you can see at a glance, all the usernames down the side and their training status related to the various SOPs and SSOPs and that sort of thing. So you can have a really bird's eye view of your entire training situation. You can also connect Icicle up to sensors. So instead of having to manually do all your QC checks, you can connect Icicle to sensors to automatically collect the telemetry from those sensors. And you can keep track of, temperature, humidity, and you can also connect it to your actual production runs. So these can end up being QC checks as well. So all of this functionality and quite a lot more really is available in Icicle. And I think I'll stop there and answer any questions that you guys might have.
All right. Before we jump into our Q&As, for those of you who are new to Icicle, we have one of our customers joining us today, Machanka Fernandez from Snowcap, one of BC's leading bakery and food service distributors. Machanka, what would you say about your experience working with Icicle for those considering software for their food business?
Hi, so I never used Icicle in my previous position. When I joined this position last year, that's when I was introduced to Icicle. And the transition to using this software was really smooth. Everything was pretty centralized from fees to inventory data. So it just made it really easy for me to pick up from where the previous HACCP coordinator left off. The user interface as well is fairly simple and intuitive, so it didn't really take me too long to get comfortable. And currently we use it for so many things. We have our SOPs, our supplier assessments, quality checks, inventory management, formula creations. So it's really very important in our process, and it's also very user friendly. We have a few team members who aren't so tech savvy, and they've also been able to use it, and it's been so helpful in our audit especially that I had last week. Just made it so much easier having all our documents together in one place. And the Icicle team has also been very helpful and prompt whenever I had any questions or I needed any help.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So if anybody has any questions, please enter them into the Q&A features of the Zoom application here. I can already see a couple of questions here, Steve, so why don't I read them out for you? Patrick
Sure.
had a number of questions for us. He asked where we were based. I mentioned that we're in BC, but he also wanted to ask about WMS, MES, and EDI processes and how we can support those things.
So we can support that. Like EDI, for example, we have a infrastructure that's built into Icicle, but all of these integrations where many customers do need integrations, of course, and Snowcap is a perfect example. We've got several integrations going with them currently. So each one of those is always a project, of course. So what we'll do is we'll meet with you, we'll discuss your requirements. In the case of EDI, we need to know what documents that you want to transmit, and then we can enable those integrations so they come directly into Icicle. And we do both unidirectional and bidirectional, so we can go either from that third-party system into Icicle or from Icicle to the third-party system, or both ways if you want to. So we really custom tailor that. Like the basic Icicle implementation is kind of fixed, and we manage that, but you have complete flexibility with any of your integrations.
Okay. A question from Felix. He sees that Icicle has significantly evolved. Is there anything that you could say uniquely sets Icicle apart from many similar systems for food safety and compliance management, activities and records with easy tracking capabilities?
Yeah, there's quite a lot really that sets it apart from Icicle or from other systems. I was just, for example, at an SQF show in Florida, and as the architect of the Icicle system, I actually don't really spend a lot of time looking at other systems because I don't want to even subconsciously be kind of, steal their good ideas. It's important to us that, we maintain a sense of integrity at Icicle. But even speaking to the competitors that, I run into, I found that a lot of them kind of don't really have the breadth of functionality that we have by any way, shape, or form. And there's really two reasons for that. One is that we have, like, for example, we have the food safety side and also the traceability side. If you don't have inventory management, you can't have really traceability, which means that you can't have a complete food safety solution that does, both of those key aspects to it. So a lot of them would be like really good on the warehouse management, but not so good on the food safety, or very good on the food safety and not on the traceability. The other thing is that there's a lot of systems I've seen where people developed it early on in the project where we were pure food safety. There was a major initiative that was funded by a food processing association that I was very worried because it was essentially the same thing we were building. But when I saw the finished version, I immediately realized that it was not going to work. Like, it's a hard problem to solve, to make something that's both highly functional and also usable. And I think that we've really nailed that one. So those are the two differences.
Another question from Patrick is if we have a Toronto presence.
Only part of our training team is based in Toronto. So we do have local people in Toronto. We don't have offices in Toronto, though. We're actually virtualized completely, so it doesn't really matter for us where we physically are. And we can always, come and see you, or we can have one of our people there see you. And if you're in Toronto, we can even have in-person training if you wish to do that.
Felix would like to know, can captured historical records be accessible for changes to be made to them?
With one exception, the answer to that question is yes. We had a bit of an issue early on with the CFIA, particularly where they wouldn't, in order to accept our inspections, we had to have a finalize option on. So when you click the finalize button, then they're cast in stone. And this gave the CFIA a sense of comfort that the records couldn't be altered after the fact, which was very important to them. That said, we have had situations where customers finalize something by accident. And if that's the case, you could reach out to us. We need to document a rationale as to why that's the case, and then we open it up. Beyond that, everything in Icicle is permission controlled, so you need to have permission to edit historical records. But assuming you have the permission, yes, you can change it after the fact.
There was a follow-up question from Patrick. He says, with SPS. I'm not sure what that means, though. Patrick, would you be able to clarify for us?
Yes, SPS is EDI process company, is the company we are using for EDI. So I need to create an API.
So there's two ways that you can do EDI. You can either do direct from recipient to sender to recipient integrations with EDI, or you can go through a VAN. So SPS is going to be an example of what's called a VAN, value added. Can't remember what the N stand for, network or something. Anyway, so that essentially what they do is they have sort of a standard infrastructure, and you can integrate and they manage the EDI traffic through them. So we can absolutely integrate with your van as well. One just slight word of caution is it can be quite costly. So, and not from our side, we're of course very economical, but the vans can charge quite a lot sometimes. So before you go down that road, you might want to have a good look
No,
at that.
we're using van. We have no choice. We're working with all the major retailers in North America, so we have no choice.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not a problem. So just, we need to gather the requirements, what kind of documents you want to transmit, and then we can integrate with your van.
Okay.
Yep. Another question here, actually a couple from Michael. He wants to pick Mika's brain a little bit, but before that, a question for you, Steve. Can you advise how does a system work with a current ERP system? Like, would they need an API? Maybe, Michael, you could let us know what current system you're currently using?
Hi, sorry. We have our own kind of ERP system, which is developed in-house. It's called a DMS.
Yeah, so this is a very common scenario. A lot of people have legacy ERPs that they need to integrate with. So we're very flexible in terms of the integrations. In fact, we've done the same for Snowcap. So we have integration with their legacy ERP. In their particular case, they had the ability to export XML documents. So they drop it in a file folder and we grab those and then process them. So first of all, you have to cross the kind of bridge about why you would want to integrate with the ERP. So it really depends on what sort of level of functionality that you're using from Icicle. So if you're using our sort of basic solution with just food safety and quality control, the main thing you're going to need is the production data and inventory transactions. So you can enable traceability and you can enable QC checks. So these are the main things that you're going to do. If you're using the more kind of comprehensive Icicle solution that includes vendor management and customer management and that sort of thing, then we'd want to we'll get your sales orders, purchase orders, and every time you create a new vendor, you create a new customer, we'd want to transmit that through the integration and create those records in Icicle. And we can also push back in the other direction to your ERP if you want the information from Icicle to go back into the ERP for some reason.
All right.
Does that answer your question?
Michael?
Just wondered if that was a sufficient answer for your question or if you needed a deeper understanding. We can go on to the next question and come back later, Michael. Just put it in the chat or something if you want.
Yeah, no worries at all. Paul says, thank you for the tour today. Michael had a question actually for Machanka. She's highlighted all the good things about the program, but he's curious about what challenges she experienced and how she overcame them. But unfortunately, it looks like Michael has also jumped off of the call here, so maybe we don't need to get into those details. We are at 10:45, so we are out of time. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, and thank you so much, Steve, for giving us a tour of the incredible system that is Icicle. If anybody here is interested in seeing a more detailed demo to see how Icicle's features for traceability, warehouse management, production, and more, feel free to reach out to us anytime. Our recording of today's session will be available on demand in the coming days, and we'll let you know as soon as it becomes available at our website, icicletechnologies.com. Again, my name's Romina, Sales and Marketing at Icicle, and Steve and I hope to see you at our next detailed demo for Icicle.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Machanka.
Actually, Michael just jumped back on.
Oh, he did.
Are you still there, Ms. Chaka?
Oh, yes, I'm still here.
And are you still there, Michael?
Yes, I am actually. I don't know what happened.
Oh.
I just went offline.
Why don't you go ahead? We've just called the webinar, but why don't you go ahead and answer the question if you don't mind?
Okay, well, I think for me, the most difficult part is just we don't have all of our documents set up in Icicle yet. So it's like trying to navigate what's not in Icicle for our SOPs and our documents and checklists and what is in Icicle. I think since I've joined the company, I haven't really transferred anything new into Icicle. I've just gone with whatever was already there. And I think that would be the most confusing part in terms of, as I said, the user interface. If I do have any questions or I'm unable to, there have been times, as Steve mentioned, there are some checks that we do and we accidentally finalize something when it's not supposed to be, then we just reach out to them and they're very prompt with their response and help us with it. But I think the challenges that I'm facing are more on my end rather than the software end.
But we do have a document transcription service as well. So if you want to send us all those documents, we'll put them into the system for you.
Yeah, we can work on something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
No,
one
thank you.
follow-up question from Neil. Where can he get a totem pole like Steve's?
Well, I actually carved that one, so that's a pretty big ask, Neil, but let's see what I could do.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today, and pleasure getting your feedback live, Machanka. And thank you, Neil, for indulging us today. We really appreciate it and love having you in the Icicle community.
Yeah, thanks for coming, everybody.